try and do one day without saying anything other than absolute praise for that child. And the parents there with the kids saying, do you think they're good enough? That alone destroys that kid.
Today, guys, is a very, very important topic we're going to cover, and it's parenting in sport. If you are a parent and you have any child wanting to be successful in sport, this is a must listen. We're going to put in loads of advice, loads of personal experience from myself being a GB athlete and my dad being my coach, and also the stuff he's done in his life with the close protection, the military, the bodyguarding. I'm going to provide some education for everyone and guidance of how to create a successful child in sport through perfect practice and parenting.
Yeah, great subject, Damon. It's a bit of a joke between coaches, and I know we've got some fantastic parents out there who are brilliant with the kids, or sometimes not the case. The parents do get a bit of stick, don't they, from time to time?
Yeah, the parents do.
Yeah, for various reasons, and it's going to be good to just chat about them now. So if you're a parent wanting to up your game to be a world champion parent in sport, then we've got some really good tips. Let's see how we go, shall we? Because it's quite an emotive subject for parents.
Yeah, it's a very important topic, and a very good psychologist said to me, who's the most important person you talk to in your life? And, you could say, your parents, your partner, your sister, your siblings. And he said, no, it's you, because you talk to yourself in your own brain every day. It's you you're talking to. But as a child, the things that you're thinking in your brain about your perception of yourself is mainly created by what they say to you. So at that age, your parents shape who you are, good and bad.
They do, yeah. It's interesting that this relationship that a coach has with their athlete, you look at some of the great coaches in the world, in football, boxing, all sorts of stuff, and you see these really talented athletes that come through, and generally the coach is their parent. They have that role, and they have to have that role to create this. And then what you generally find is in business as well, business leaders, the people who work for them, they have a parent figure. It's just what we naturally do as human beings, So with the parent of the child, so the child's got one parent, which is the coach, and they are like their parent. If the coach gets it right, they can release the parenting chemicals within the child, the oxytocin and serotonin, the we chemicals, not the me chemicals, which the child will release by doing the sport.
Explain the me and the we chemicals.
So the endorphins and the dopamine are chemicals that you release for you to do stuff and achieve stuff. If you're lacking the other two chemicals, which release trust and honesty and all those feelings, and love, which, you're thinking, hang on, I don't love my coach, but you know what, you actually do. You get this chemical reaction if the coach gets it right. If the coach is missing some of that, then that person isn't going to get to be the best they're going to be. But with the parents of the child, they've got to be releasing all those chemicals in the child as well. And the issue we sometimes have with parents, and I've parented, and I've learned this over, 30 odd years, doing so much research, as you know, into it. If the parent is getting the child to release different chemicals by being negative, although they don't know they are, by being worried and concerned and all the rest of it, the chemicals that you need in your body to do various tasks, we're a fantastic machine, the human race. If the parents are not world champion parents, if they've not researched it, if they don't understand their role in it, if they don't understand how to act and change their behaviours, they put that on the child, not intentionally, but the child feels it. So the child will feel anxious, unappreciated, frightened, low self-esteem, which you see parents, that's what they do to the children. They don't do it in a mean way. They just don't know they're doing it because they're not a world champion parent. They've not studied it. Some of our coaches, how many years do they put into to being a coach? The athlete puts how many years to get into that level? And you say to the parent, this is with the most important link, how much have you put in to develop yourself? And the answer is nothing. And that's where we're missing a big piece of this jigsaw puzzle in as coaches. What are we doing for the parents? And we've got a workshop coming up for our parents. I've done several workshops for the parents, teaching them how to be world champion parents.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. You can be training your student in the class, then they spend a lot of time at home. And also they spend a lot of time at school. So it's loads of different influences. They are being influenced by different factors. And they say that trauma from the parents is passed down to the children. It's like when you see a kid that's scared of dogs or a kid that has these fears,
Yeah.
generally the parent will have the fears that's been put onto the child. And equally, you have children that want to do sport and want to be successful, but their parent is maybe had self-doubt or never put themselves on a pedestal and doubted themselves. Then sometimes they can create that doubt to the child.
Yeah, definitely.
I think for me, the biggest thing that I've been given from you is confidence. And when you're wanting to be successful at something, I think confidence is the biggest thing you can give your child is sheer confidence. And I see sometimes parents put their children down. They can, be negative towards them, but even if it's in a bantery way, you're still hearing that. And I think if you hear a negative opinion from your parent at that age, that's the person you take as gospel, no matter who's telling you what.
Absolutely.
So, I've had many a friend with the father, son, and there's obviously mum, daughter, but the father, son relationship in sport. For example, Jordan Thomas, karate world champion, his dad coached him. Latalo Mohamed, his dad coached him. You got so many. Michael Page, his dad coached him. There's so many relationships in sport with parent and child, which I think is a very unique relationship.
Yeah.
But for me, I believe that the best thing that you gave me was utter confidence.
Yeah. Thank you, son.
Okay.
I'll take that one.
Take it.
Yeah, it is. And if you haven't got that confidence, you've got to fake it. You've got to learn how to fake it. You've got to do some inner work. You've got to work on your affirmations. You've got to work on what it is you've got to do. But initially, you've got to understand you have that in you. And most people don't. They don't understand it. So if I was going to you, as a coach, and in, let's say, business, and you say, look, Lee, I want you to, I want to turn my business around. I know we can do better, but all the staff aren't working well and all the rest of it. And I'll say, come on, let's have a chat and let me see how you operate. And generally, the problem lies with them, the head, the parent of this lot.
Yep.
And so through a period of discussion, as you well know, when we take the mentoring model and I start looking into the antecedents of this person, who are they, where they come from, then I can start talking to them and helping them understand that they have this in them that they'd never known before. It can be very emotional, but you can only fix it when you know it's there. If you don't know it's there, you can't fix it, right?
There's no problem in your own mind.
Yeah, so what parents have to... A good tip for you is think about the words you're saying. And when you speak to your child about the sport or in general, if there's ever a but or a negative or anything like that, catch yourself doing it and try and do one day without saying anything other than absolute praise for that child. And even parents, because you love your child that much, right? You'll do anything for your kid and your kid's always right. Always right. And you'll stand by them and all this kind of stuff. So how many times have you heard this? And coaches out there will know this. When you go to a tournament or the kids moved a section or something like that, and the parents there with the kids saying, do you think they're good enough? That alone destroys that kid. Because what it's showing is the parent is doubting the child, and also
doubting, but at the same time trying to protect, which is the natural thing we've done for years, protecting their nest, protecting their child.
Yeah, and that's natural what the parent's doing. But what they don't understand is it's a massive cortisol rush in the child that gives them this anxiety and this self-doubt. And then they'll revisit that through the schemas in their head. And they we've seen it many times. You get to tournament and they're there, and at the last minute, you go, whoa, what's happened? And they're going, my parents don't think I should be here. I trust my parents. I love my parents. If they say it's right, it's right. And in a millisecond, that one sentence has destroyed that kid's opportunity to perform well. It's crazy, isn't it?
Some of the stuff that we speak about with the mindset, and we're so big on mindset, and it's a powerful thing. Once you unlock how to work your mind out, that's when it's almost a cheat code to life and parenting and coaching. And also it's important to know that with the children that don't have parents, I'm blessed to have a very supportive family and dad and mum, and some people haven't got that. So it's also important that the coach then can become almost like a parent figure. So if you're coaching basketball or football or martial arts or anything, tennis, and you have these children that come in without a parent in their life or a parent that doesn't really bother with them, I feel like it's a chance for that coach to then take on the parent role. And there's been so many examples in martial arts that we know where the coach has become more influential than the parent. So it's important that it's not just the parents, but the coaches and mentors of the sports that they're doing can become father figures and mother figures.
Oh, yeah. You see it time after time, and that's the thing where a lot of coaches, I know we're going to do things specifically for coaches, but this is a common thing you see, that as a coach, you can rule by fear. That's the way we've been taught how to do it. You do it by fear. It's the carrot and the stick. You don't think you're doing that. You can do that, and that's going to work fine. But as soon as you stop, the athlete will stop. As soon as they don't fear the fear anymore, something happens. That relationship is one-sided. It's an incorrect way of doing it. So when a great coach releases the feeling of love and protection, utter protection, no criticism, the only thing they're going to get from that coach, and they know, is praise, no matter what happens. And once you get that relationship, then that's a different relationship. And that's what you get even when you're working with teams, in war zones. If you get it right, you'll have a fantastic team, a happy team, a team that is effective and who have a good time as well and have a joy for life. If you get it wrong, the child or the team, it will do what it's got to do, but will hate every minute of it. And they get anxious, they get sick, they get injured, all these things because they're not getting fulfilled as a child, and a child needs love and affection, and they need to know that they're safe, and they need to know they're not going to get criticised, and they can be who they want to be. It's a big subject, this, but when the coaches get it right, and a lot of coaches do, we know a lot of great coaches, don't we? But for some of the coaches who get it wrong, combine that with parents who are getting it wrong as well, all of a sudden, you see coaches, and we talked about this a while ago, that you see coaches and their athletes don't perform as well as they should because the coach, you've seen the coaches, you see what they do. Their skill level's fantastic, but there's something missing, and it's generally this. It's generally that child's not getting everything they need from the coach, and it inhibits their consistency, which is the key, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great point. And for me, like you said, it's important to give them love and affection and no criticism. But equally, when you're coaching, there's high performance coaches out there, there's parents that the children are going to be tennis stars or, in pushing in the football leagues. So there are times I believe that you need to give constructive feedback.
Yeah.
In sometimes that might be delivered in a way that's not all roses. So for example, you've got a team or an athlete, and I was similar, so we can touch on the story between ourselves, and there's something not quite right, and you're giving them the praise and you're giving them the reward, and the parents might be praising them and rewarding them and driving them around the country, and they're not performing to their full capabilities. So there's an issue missing. So then parents are wasting a lot of, not wasting, because it's not wasting. You don't lose, you learn. And they spend thousands of thousands, the parents in sport, so much money and sacrifice. And would you say that was a time where you might have to get the best out of them through being a bit more, not dominant, but a bit more firmer? Are there times where I think there are times where you have to be firm, and in coaching you have to be strict, but it's not emotionally led. It's a plan. Yeah, I know. With the
mentorship model as well, with the ABC, the antecedents and behaviour, and the consequence of that. When you use that model correctly, and you're asking rather than telling, and an athlete's doing something, and the first question is, why are you doing this? Well, you've taught me. No, I've never taught you to do that. Well, you have. You've taught them something that they're just doing what you've taught them. But what you haven't picked up is there's something missing. But because you've not spoke to the person, and I spoke at length about a rugby union player with the same issue with the head of the Scottish Rugby Union at the time. And I said, has anybody asked him, how do you feel when this happens? And really asked him why he was collapsing the scrum. One of the best players in his position in the world, but he got dropped from Scotland because he kept crashing the scrum. I said, has anybody actually done any work with him? Well, no. But he just keeps doing it. I said, well, this behaviour, it's got to change. But unless you know what's going on in his mind, if you keep telling him to stop doing it, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know why he's doing it. And you don't know why. So you've got to ask him, how does he feel? How does he feel about that? And then if you agree to something with the athlete, so say for example, you think as a coach, because you're experienced, I need to push this kid, I'll say kid, person or young person, through this pain barrier. So once they get it, I know it's going to take them to the next level. And if he said to the athlete, look, I think this, this is what I think you need to do. Would you like to do it? Because it's going to give you this. It's not going to be pleasant. I'm telling you that now because I really care for you, but it's not going to be pleasant, but everybody has to do it. And I'm really honoured that I can do it for you. Are you okay with that? Do you trust me? Now you're building this parenting model here, and then you got out there and beast the living daylights out
obviously.
of them until they're sick. But the child knows, or the athlete knows, that there's one thing that you will never hurt them. And once that trust is there, you can do anything together as a coach, parent, team with this athlete.
It's so important to have the bond with the parent and the child. And I think, touching what I said before, confidence. And one thing, I'd be interested to know your opinion. So for me, I love martial arts and I'm a perfectionist. So I look at the technique and I'm studying technique all the time. And if it's not perfect, it's not perfect. So I'm not seeing it as them doing it. I'm seeing it, I'm appreciating the beauty of the technique. Since retiring from competition at the highest level and coaching a young team that are up and coming, I kick myself because I sometimes go home at nighttime and I'm in bed and I lie down. And I'm sure not all coaches do this, but that's the way. If I want to do something, I one-track mind. So I think if I was too harsh on someone, or tonight I didn't give him as much praise, and then I say to myself, right, on Thursday is going to be praise day, but it's not me being harsh on them. It's me seeing the martial art as it is and thinking it could be better. But that's because you want them to be improve and improve and improve, and the end goal is always perfection, which is not existent. Which is I struggle in all areas. This perfection. So for me, I find it hard to give the utter confidence and praise when the technique isn't right. So now I'm understanding maybe the technique is not my level, but it's better for them. So that was a great hook kick. And then inside me, it's like, it wasn't though. Yeah. It wasn't perfect. So would you suggest to parents to praise technique and performance that isn't the end goal? Or, if the technique isn't correct, would you want to give them praise on that to make them feel good? Or on the flip side, would the praise make them think, well, if this is correct, then I don't have to make it better or change it? Yeah,
it's a really good question, Damon. And again, when you said about the confidence, it's giving the child confidence, but also giving them, the child needs to know to release this oxytocin that it needs. It needs to know that you're never going to criticize. You're always there and you're always supportive. So, and that's all a parent needs to be. Unless, they want to go down the coaching route and learn skills where they can, effectively help the child or the young athlete. But it's being consistent is the thing that a child needs. That consistency of parenthood. The parent never flaps. Parent never, how many times you've seen a young athlete in our sport fighting another athlete who is considerably better than them, and the kid looks up into the audience, and when they look at the face of their parents, they know, I'm going to get beat here. Because they see the anxiousness in their face.
Yeah, a quick one on that was I've been in the big finals in stadiums with thousands of people in different countries, and I remember walking out to this one fight, and it was a big occasion. It was the first time I picked up the energy of my coach's nerves.
I remember that, yeah.
I was like, and I remember saying to the coach, I said, "Are you okay?" But then I felt, and I thought to myself, well, if they're nervous, then the confidence is a bit,
That's you done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's you done.
Regardless of, you're in control of your own performance. And I've had it a couple of times, but I remember one time when I felt I can pick up on your nerves now.
Yeah.
How interesting. And the parents do the same.
Yeah, and it sets the cortisol in your body going like mad. And you can't control this, by the way. No matter how strong your mind is, when that hits and it all starts working, you go out there doubting yourself. That level you are competing at, one tiny, if you go 2% less in that performance, you're done. And that's a really good story. I like that story. And for parents as well, it's the positivity. How many parents come away with a kid and go, my kid should have won, the refs got it wrong. Well, who does that help?
Blame culture.
Yeah, you lost against that person because their coach is better than yours. How many times? I wish we had them as a coach. So,
sorry, I remember. Sorry, Dad. I remember one of the competitions recently, and someone said, "That's not fair. My child's not been taught that kick."
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't control what I'm teaching, but yeah,
I know. And a few parents out there listening now will be going, "Oh my God, that's me." You do it to protect your child. And we spoke to a parent, I don't know, last year, and they said, "Yeah, I've watched the video. My child should have won 6-2 when they got beat 2-0. I've watched the video back."
Yeah.
So now the child this is mixed messages. Hang on, I got beat. My coach wants me to train harder, but my parent says if the referees were better, I would win every time. So now it's the referee's problem. And then when the athlete starts focusing on the referee and not the opponent, thinking, right, are you going to do it to me today? Are you? And then lo and behold, they get beat again. It's not their fault. So this happens, and it happens quite a lot. Coaches do it quite a lot, so the whole culture of coaching is changing. It is changing. The work I'm doing as well, it's changing business, it's changing schools. I did a big presentation for a big setup down south for the headmasters and the deputy heads of this council area. And I was talking about this, and the teachers were coming up to me after going, wow, didn't even consider that. That is so incredible. So as we're moving on now as coaches, especially all the work I've put into doing all the research and actually doing it in war zones where people think they're going to die and making them up their game and getting great camaraderie and having a great time when you think you're going to die. If you do it at that level, you can do it at any level. And that's why I'm so passionate about it,
Such a depth of information that we have, and especially the stuff that you've been working on recently. And the past few years, you've really delved into the mentorship and the mindset and educating, upgrading your skills. There's so much to give, which we'll be covering on, and things in the future. But for me, I remember for the parents out there that I think, again, with the advice for your children in sport, in any sport, and how to guide them. A story for myself, which is kind of relatable, is I remember, and it was a great experience that we had. I remember the Grand Prix in the Olympic Taekwondo. So the Grand Prix were in Manchester or London, and I'd never used to compete in the UK, did I? It was always in these Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, all these different countries, China, Korea. And when you guys came to the tournament, it was probably once every 2 years. It wasn't often. And I always used to get apprehensive about being in the crowd. And I remember the first few times when I walked out and I saw everyone, the first Grand Prix, I got into the quarterfinals, but it just threw me a little bit. And the next time I thought to myself, just put your head forward and ignore them. And you can't ignore your brain. You can't trick your brain. I've done it many times in the tournaments, and you just can't trick your brain. You can't trick yourself. So don't pretend they're not there. And that didn't go too well. And then the last one, I thought to myself, well, I was just about to kind of retire at the time. And I had a meeting with a psychologist at the time, Sarah Broadhead, in Team GB Taekwondo. And she was saying to me, and I said to her, the nerves of my parents being there, but not nerves, but seeing them all there. And she just said to me, they've traveled down, because you think your parents have traveled down and they've spent time and effort and money, and you don't want to perform badly. And then she just said to me, if you lose, will your parents, no, she went, if you win, will your parents and family love you the same? Yes. If you lose, are your parents and family going to love you the same? Yes. So where is your problem? And that's a great thing for parents in sport as well, because if you feel that love from them, and not every kid has that, but if you feel that love and that support, win, lose or draw, they're supporting you as a person. It's not just the end result. So when I embraced you guys sitting there and I walked out and I saw you and I smiled and I saw everyone, I was happy, and it lit me up, which was nice. And that was probably one of my best experiences of my career, just having you guys there and the family around. And I embraced it rather than shut it off. And I think the key for that is because I just realized, yes, of course, they've supported you from 12 years old. They've traveled different countries and seen you win and lose. But as soon as you understand that the love comes either way, that made me embrace and perform amazing. So maybe that's a big lesson for parenting as well, is that just what you went back on, that unconditional support regardless of the result. Yeah.
And this is another thing. And I know we're talking about parents, and this is a really good tip as well. If your child goes to any kind of sport and they can podium finish, or so they can get a reward for what they're doing, and you go there, you've got two options now. They're going to get beat on the way, or they're going to win, and anywhere in between. So it's kind of black and white. If I lose, I've done badly. If I win, I've done good. So they're going to get it 50% right. And especially when you're a podium finishing club who thrives on podium finishes, we've won so many medals and those athletes will either have a good experience or a bad experience on that day. And it's most likely they'll have a bad experience, especially when they're coming up through the ranks. Now, if you flip it on the head and you talk about performance and you're a performance-led club, you can pick out of their performance something that was good. Yeah, you've got beat. Well, it doesn't matter whether you've got beat or not, because we learn when we lose, right? What we're aiming for is that championship in 5-6 years' time. So if I can make every time you compete a good experience, whether you win or you lose, then you're not going to be frightened of going to tournaments in case you lose. Because if you lose, you get a good experience as well. The people don't go out there to lose. well, try and win. Well, I was figuring I was going to do that. You're not going to go out there and try and not win.
Sorry, on that.
This is old-fashioned terminology.
It's like I've seen parents in the crowd and they say some crazy things and they're like shouting and getting angry, and then they shout at their child. Do you not think that they tried to win? Do you not think, like, how can you blame this person? They maybe weren't good enough on the day. Maybe you affected them with your crazy screaming. But yeah, just not think that they tried. And I always think that after someone's been trained and they perform, win, lose or draw, they tried their best.
Yeah.
And as coaches and as parents that are coaches, often it can be that if you win, we win.
Yeah.
But if you lose, you lose.
Yes.
And I've seen so many coaches and parents that we won, but if there's a loss, it's your loss. You didn't perform well. You didn't try and kick him in the head. You didn't go for it. You know, you're not getting McDonald's on the way home on the motorway. At the end of the day, there's a problem there, and don't criticize the child. And even if they didn't perform to their best and they were worried and they were scared and they were timid, they still did the best in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like you said, rather than punishing and ridiculing and giving negative energy to your child, which will probably make them quit and probably cause a problem in your relationship. So I think there's scope for the confidence. And I think people out there might be thinking, well, if you praise them for loss, will they not have that chip on their shoulder to go for victory? So there's so many different fractions to parenting, and there's so many different examples of kids. Some kids that have had a tough upbringing that want to prove someone wrong. Some kids that don't get affection from their parent and they're trying to gain the affection through the sport. And there's so many different examples, and it's working out what comes best for you. And there's so many things we can speak about, and each one's tailored to the different type of child. Yeah. Like you said with the antecedents. So explain quickly. There's so much to talk about on the antecedents, but drop in quickly what it is and the stuff we've been working on and understanding with it all.
Yeah, it's interesting. And this is a United Nations course that we deliver. And the antecedents of the child, even before the age of 7, the child is formed. That's the child. And whether it's nurtured or natured or a combination of two, there are characters in them and that stays with them all their life. But as they grow older, when they're challenged with very challenging situations, they can revert back to that child and how that child behaves. So what we try and establish through the various ways we do it with the antecedents is, what kind of child is this? Or what kind of athlete is this? Even if we got, we have athletes come up from time to time here for us to train them before championships and things like that. The first thing I want to know is, what kind of child is in you? Because when the going gets tough, that child will come out. And alcohol is a good one for it. You see people behave crazily with alcohol, but that's that child inside them. And then once I know what child it is, I know how to talk to you, I know how to deal with you as a coach. So if you're a free child or an adaptive child or a wild child, I can't coach you like I would coach any of the other two, because it doesn't mix. It never happens. So if I coach everybody the same, let's say, for example, I was a free child, and I teach everybody as a free child. If you're an adaptive child, the language I'm saying, you won't be able to understand it.
How true is that? So the free child is, they're not people pleasers. They're just doing, they're just doing their thing. Yeah. They do what they like. Yeah. And I think a good example, like you said, with the free child and adaptive child is, sometimes the free child attention span can be a bit shorter sometimes, I believe. Yeah. And for, you have an adaptive child or a different child where you can say, we're doing this technique because you're going to get better. And when you're older, you're going to win the Scottish championships, and we're developing it. Maybe the free child, there's a really cool move for you to do as a young kid. Do you reckon you could do this cool move? And they're like, I can do a move. And then you disguise it in a different way for each kind of child. Yeah. And the adaptive child wants to please the parents. Yep. Or the coach. Exactly. So when you're asking them questions, if you're asking them the questions incorrectly, you're going to get the answer that they think you want. And they can lead you right down that path, because you've not actually sat down with them and established what kind of child they are. If they're an adaptive child, straight away, the way you communicate with them is totally different. Otherwise, they won't tell you what you know. You need to know what's going on inside their head. But if I'm talking to you in a different way, you're never going to tell me. And I'm never going to know you're not telling me. And you'll continue to tell me what I want to hear. So now I get frustrated as a coach is, why are you not doing it? You're telling me everything I want to hear, but you're not asking the right questions to this child. Crazy, isn't it? We do this with people I work with in war zones, with businesses. It never ends.
It's a fantastic subject. I love this.
Yeah, it's such a great topic and great things to talk about. And it's so interesting how you need to be technical to be a coach. You need tactical information on the sport to be elite. You need to know what you're doing, but equally, you need to be able to understand the person as an individual. And I think it's interesting that we've spoken, you start to understand that in a team of 20 athletes, there's 20 different personality types. There's 20 different things that they're doing it for. So someone could be in the sport that's striving for recognition. So that's their driving force, is the recognition. Someone could be doing it because they're told they're good. Some people don't really have a passion for training, but they just can fight.
Yeah.
And I saw an interview the other day, and it was a boxer that was in tears, and he's like, I'm this age, I don't want to have this pressure on me. Almost like I don't want to do it anymore. But you've got a talent. So some people don't like to train hard. Some people like to fight hard. And some people doubt themselves. Some people are that strong that they don't need any praise in a session, and they don't need anything. They can just, like a robot, like a machine. I was someone that really liked praise, and when I had the praise, it made me feel good. And you got the rushes and then the dopamine, serotonin, all that kind of stuff. I liked the praise. Some people don't need praise. Women need different things than men at times. So the coaching is such a wider spectrum, and the parenting than people think. And for me, the experience I've had coaching kids and using the things that we've been working on, the things that you've been educating me on, it's sometimes just asking why and giving them the autonomy. And I've seen so many parents in sport and also parents and children. And I believe the nicest children and their demeanors and the way they behave is because it's a direct relationship between how the parent talks to the child. So if the parent talks to the child with aggression and anxiety, the kid gets aggression and anxiety. You're training a dog and you hear people shouting, why are you doing that? And they're like, why is a dog barking? Why is it out of control? Because the dog is scared. It's hearing you shout. It doesn't understand English, I don't think. Yes. Tell me if I'm wrong, dogs. Yes. And then now the dog's transferring your personality. So it's so funny how the parents sometimes don't understand that their personal traumas and insecurities can pass down to the child. But the funny thing is they don't even see it.
Yeah, they don't know it. And this is why it's such an emotive subject. And I'm glad there's not a lot of parents here right now. I wish they would, because we could actually, educate them. Sometimes with parents, when I've gone through the process with them, it can be very emotional, because for the first time, they've realized they're actually a negative person, and they've thought they were a positive person all this time. And it was interesting. This was a lady, and she had a young athlete. There was the parent and then the grandmother. The grandmother was the most negative person I've probably met in my life.
Ever. Negative Nancy.
It was really bad. She's a lovely woman.
Yeah.
So then I'm trying to tell the parent what to do with the kid. And I said, will you do me a favour? Don't mention this conversation to your mum. And she went, why? She's the most positive person in my life. So it's gone down the generation.
That she's the positive one, and that's the benchmark.
Yeah. And then obviously the kid was underperforming. It was because of the mum. And I'm thinking, this is going to take a long time, this. I've got to change your mindset massively for you to help this child. And I couldn't do it. And in the end, I banned the parents from the gym. They were having such an effect on the child. I banned them. I banned them from tournaments. And you know what? This kid, you know who I'm talking about, this kid went from being beaten all over Europe, but I knew he could do it. And from that time, he went like that. He ended up a world champion.
Just shows the ceiling, the ceiling of your perspectives and perceptions. The limit creates a ceiling of your success.
Yeah.
And that's in your own brain and your parents' brain and your coach's brain. And what I've understood recently is whatever benchmark you have, and also the upper talent, the upper level, I believe, is the best talent that I know in my world, you'll reach that potentially. So if a parent of a child that's, I don't know, from not the best area, they have this perspective of where their child could go, the ceiling. Maybe it's a certain job. Maybe it's not having a job. I'm not too sure. But that's what I've seen in my family. And that's my reality really is this is normal. You give someone £100,000 job when they're 20. The vast majority of people would be thinking, how well you're doing and what a great job. But then if that person was in Elon Musk or Bill Gates or any entrepreneur's son, then they'll think, oh, I've just started 100K. Well, anyway, it's a starting point, but I'll get there.
Yeah.
So, and equally, so that's their perspective, and their ceiling is the best. And if you have a coach who's maybe won the English championships and maybe got a bronze in the nationals, then when he's coaching his kids or his adults, that's his limit. And generally the athletes will adapt the same limit. But when you've got a world champion dad, a world champion mum as a parent, a world champion coach, or someone that just understands the level of the world champion, then their ceiling is different. You don't have to be the best in the world as a coach to produce the best, but you have to have the goal of being the best. So when they win the Scottish championships or the English championships, you give them praise, but in your head it's like, it's a start.
Yes.
But you've got so much more to go. Whereas some coaches and parents, their ceiling of success in their own eyes is portrayed onto the individual.
Yeah. And it can limit their journey. And I know we've got coaches at the highest level and we've got coaches down here, all do a fantastic job at their own level. They've got A-class fighters, B-class, C-class, D-class, E-class, and that's all they'll ever be. Because that's the way it is. Some of the athletes are just not good enough, but they're quite happy to podium finish every now and again. Some of the athletes are just happy to get into the quarters every now and again. So everyone's got their place, but if you get everything right, you just might get one to be that world champion. If you get everything right. If it's not all right, and there's bits missing out of this massive jigsaw, it can be the parents, it can be the coach, it can be a combination, then they're never going to get there, ever going to get there. And it's and as well, the Professor Steve Peters, who was your psychologist for many, many years, he's done a book now on the chimp paradox. It's for kids.
It's a great book.
Get the book. Parents, please get this book, read this book. It will change the way that you help your child be the best that they can be. And everyone's different, but all we can do with these young athletes coming up in any sport is say, right, okay, I, as a coach, I'm going to do everything in my control to make you the best that you can be. Full stop. That's it, job done.
100%. And the chimp paradox by Steve, who I've worked with numerous times and worked with his chimp paradox and the chimp mindset psychology in the Olympics and the Olympic team. Yeah, great man. And the stuff that he teaches and educates to the children is just, it can change their lives, not just their sporting lives. So as a parent, I believe that's a must have in your locker. And a quick story about Steve Peters. He went to the rugby team. I don't know if it was England rugby team. I'm not too sure which rugby team it was. But I always remember when he told us this story and I loved it. So Steve was at the time, I think maybe in his 50s or late 50s, or I'm not too sure, early 60s, I'm not too sure.
Recently, I've spoke to somebody who was there.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
I've told this story a few times.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah,
so
it's a cool story.
So Steve went to this big rugby team, trying to teach them about the mindset and psychology and understanding the brain and the model, and these alpha males with testosterone in them, they just ignored him. They were talking and they weren't taking it on because as time's gone on, people have valued sports psychology more.
Yes.
And I still think it's in its infancy in sport as well as the workplace, and it will be bigger and bigger and bigger. The USA are ahead of us, I think, in terms of the psychiatry and the psychology, but we'll catch up. So he went to the rugby players and they weren't listening. They were, I think, being a bit disrespectful. And he's a very, very educated guy on psychology, Dr. Steve. So he said to them, okay, so I'm trying to educate you nicely and talk to you through the mindset and my experiences and my theories, but you won't listen. So if we want to go alpha, let's butt heads. So he said to them, if you go out sprinting with me on the pitch, so we'll leave the office or the room that we're having the presentation in, and do you want to have a race with me? And if I beat at least one of you, we'll come back in and you'll listen. And they started laughing because Steve's not a big guy, and he was.
And how old is he? 50 odd at the time.
Yeah, and they're big rugby players, so they're giggling and they put their trainers on and went outside. And he then did shuttle sprints with them, and I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, he beat everyone but one or two of them in the whole team. So after the sprinting, he said, well, now I've got your attention through being an alpha and relaying on your level, so let's come in and listen to me. So they listened to him. But little did they know that Steve was one of the best veteran runners, I think, in the world. Well, you'd never know it. He's very understated, a very quiet guy and humble and well-spoken. So Yeah, Steve Peters, The Chimp Paradox, great guy,
Yes.
great book, and we're going to chat a lot more on this topic to help everyone and to educate, and also we educate ourselves through our conversations. So The Chimp Paradox, have a look in the link on the bottom of the video, and we'll put a link up for the Chimp Paradox book. It is a great book.
So there we have it, parents. A lot of things to think about. And I hope some of the coaches have enjoyed some of this, and perhaps you can give some of these coaching points to the parents, and let's get our backup system for these young athletes as best as we can, so we can really, really serve them, which is what we're talking about. So hope you've enjoyed listening. If you've got any questions, as always, just leave them in the comments and we'll get back to you.
Cheers, guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. Please subscribe if you haven't, and drop a like on the video. It's going to help our video educate as many people in the world as we can. So if it educated you, I'm sure it'll educate and inspire a lot more people. We've come across the position of love and supporting your children through the winning and losing, but don't be misguided. The fact that when we train our athletes and when we trained in the past, it can be tough love and hard training, but there's always still no criticism and just support. So I hope you enjoyed the episode and look forward to chatting to you all again soon.